Hello and welcome to the final team project at Arizona State University for IFT 381 Fall A 2023 semester. Before we get too far in, let's go over a brief agenda of what we'll be covering today. First, we will start with the team introduction. Second, we'll hop into a case analysis overview. Third, we'll kind of go a little bit deeper into that case analysis and define what happened and what was impacted. Next, we'll talk about next steps, considerations, and protections you can take or an organization can take against an attack like what we're going to discuss. And to close out, we will have a summary of everything discussed and some final thoughts and more questions as we look at this attack. So for this team, I elected to do this project by myself. My name is Jason Merritt. I attend Arizona State University from Charleston, South Carolina. Currently, I have an IT career that's focused around virtual desktop infrastructure, anything from Citrix, VMware Horizon View, and more recently doing some Azure Virtual Desktop. I really enjoyed this class because it gives me an opportunity to revisit some IT infrastructure stuff that I don't look at every day and really focus on the security aspect of information systems. So if you want to connect with me, I've got my LinkedIn down there in the corner. Always happy to meet new people in the professional world. So what are we going to talk about today? This case analysis is going to be on something that occurred in 2017 known as SpamBot. This attack was originally identified by a Paris cybersecurity firm, and they nicknamed it Onliner. In a lot of my research during this, I noticed that this cybersecurity firm didn't get a lot of credit for the coverage. Most of the coverage came from a man named Troy Hunt. So Troy Hunt is the founder and runner of a website called Have I Been Pwned, which I thought that was an interesting website. So I actually went and looked, and Mr. Hunt is providing the ability for you to put your email in to see if you have been part of a data leak. And I guess ironically enough, I, like many of you, probably have 2 or 3 emails, some for personal, some for professional, and we've all got that one account that we sign up for all these spam attempts that were probably going to send us junk mail. Putting all 3 of my emails in there, the only one that hadn't been compromised in a data leak was the one that I used for spam. And I couldn't believe it, and I still can't believe it today. So anyways, SpamBot. This occurred as a data leak, not a malicious attack against anything. This was a massive compromise of 700 million plus emails, passwords, email servers. This data seemed to be made up from multiple sources, and other previous data leaks notably mentioned were the LinkedIn and the exploit-in leaks that were all also found in this data. And it also included just kind of bogus emails, things like where you're almost guessing at sales@company.com, human resources at company.com, and seeing if you can generate just email lists to send spam to. The one positive note that I did see coming out of this was while it was 700 million, and that is a huge number, to put that into perspective, Troy Hunt again was quoted saying that is one address for every single man, woman, and child in the entirety of Europe. And that doesn't put that on scale. I don't know what else will. But the positive note coming out of this was that real number of email addresses is a fraction of 700 million. A lot of these seem to be illegitimate guesses, just nonsensical email. So now we know kind of what happened. Let's actually go into some of the details. Before we talk about details, let's define what exactly spam is. On a simplistic base, spam is unwanted, unsolicited messages that get sent to users. These can be emails, messages you get on social media, anything you don't want. We all probably know it. We all have spam folders in our emails. Things like advertisements. Often they'll include links or attachments that you're not quite sure what they do. and I think we've all been trained to do not click on those. So we have spam, and now we have a spam bot to discuss. Spam bots are simply the automation that either distributes, creates the accounts, or assists the spam in getting delivered in some way, form, or fashion. You may have heard about social media, like people use the word influencer, with the ability to purchase followers. That would be done through spam bots. These bots can enable and go out and actually sign up for and create accounts, and then in turn follow the person that is purchasing the followers. They can also be used to send out mass emails, like we talked about, as harmless as an advertising, or as malicious as sending out mass emails with malware links and them hoping someone clicks on it and they can take control of that machine. Commonly enough, these spam bots use something called online web scraping. You can hear it as data scraping, but scraping is the key part of that. And essentially, they're collecting information from websites, either whether it be pictures, emails, in an attempt to, one, amass data, and two, create legitimacy in their spam request. If you have a picture of a real person and a name, but maybe it's their not real email address, that may come across as more legitimate to you than other requests. Now, we have spam bots. What actually happened? The security firm discovered that there was a web server hosted out of the Netherlands, and we all know a web server, anything that's using the hypertext transfer protocol. They can use other protocols, FTP, SMTP. That's just responding to client requests made over the web. So anything Amazon.com, Walmart.com, all have web servers to host all that. This web server hosted a giant list of emails, passwords, email servers that had zero authentication to get to it. Anybody with a URL could go there and download everything that the web server had. So just any simple prevention, a multi-factor authentication, would have stopped this completely. But it was wide open and the data got out there. And we're going to talk about, I guess, why that matters in the next slide. So you're probably telling yourself, okay, someone has my email address. Does that really matter to me personally? On the surface, you probably don't care. It'll go to your spam filter, you'll delete it. But on the broader scope of information security, you have to ask yourself, what can be done with this information? And now that it's out there, it's just making it easier and easier for malicious actors to attack organizations. So to protect yourself personally against spam, education is a big one. We won't talk a ton about that on this slide, but the Cyber Infrastructure and Security Agency has been recorded that 90% of all cyber crime begins with clicking a link in an unsolicited email. So it does have a large impact. Use services, Microsoft, Yahoo, Google, that have built-in spam filters. A lot of these will come with spam filters that use natural language processing that look for keywords like free trial, buy now, to mark those as spam. Beyond that, you can take input from us where you mark things as spam and the system gets a little bit smarter on what to look for. And then we'll touch on organizational, so more, you're the IT person working at a company. What can you do to protect against these types of attacks? And we'll do that in two methods of proactive and reactive. So let's start with the proactive methods. We already touched on user education a little bit, but we'll dive in some more. First is how to identify spam. Often you can look for grammatical errors or just poorly written emails in general. With the advancement of AI and things like ChatGPT, this is becoming harder because it is getting harder and harder to discern a human versus AI writing something. Attention to detail. Example of that is they will often alter domain names with Microsoft.com. Take one O out and it still looks like Microsoft.com. And that's an easy way to fool a user. And the most obvious we've talked about, but we'll keep saying it, is unknown links and unknown attachments. Do not open those. Don't click on them. A good way for users to identify real, legitimate email traffic is implementing digital signatures in the organization, so you know the person sending it had to sign it saying, I am me, you can trust this email. Another one is services you can sign up for called spam bot listings. Two common ones are the Spam House Project and the Composite Blocking List. These organizations provide information like IPs that spam bots come from that are known spam bots, characteristics of an attack. You can look at volume, timing, how often it occurred, and other domains to include in a block list. These listings can become very important for some of the next things we're going to discuss in the technical safeguard, as they give you a starting point and you can use historical attacks to protect yourself. So let's hop into the technical safeguards. Web application firewalls are a really good one to implement for stuff like this. It's a layer 7 device. Often it'll sit behind some kind of load balancing for your web traffic. This will give you the ability to look at your traffic and act on predefined settings. You can look at things like bandwidth, where the source address is coming from. If you're getting a lot of requests from one source, all of a sudden you can choose to drop that traffic or maybe even increase your bandwidth so you don't have an outage. Another one would be CAPTCHA. I think we're all familiar with this. If you go to a website and you click on the little box that says "I am not a robot," that is a CAPTCHA challenge. The advantage of that is you can prevent spam from being able to do that. People can't sign up for fake accounts. And it's pretty easy to implement on websites. One of a couple disadvantages are it's not foolproof, and it can be a user inconvenience, which will drive traffic away from your site. Similar to CAPTCHA, you have confirm opt-in, which is a kind of CAPTCHA and take another layer to it, where you have to put in your email and maybe even go to the email and click a link once you receive it, or put in a phone number and provide some other form of authentication. So we talked proactive, now let's talk reactive. Reacting is the attack has occurred, it was successful, how do we identify and prevent? One method is host intrusion detection systems, and not to be confused with prevention systems. In the detection system, it is going to analyze what happened and be able to look for malicious activity. You can use this through like signature patterns, and taking that information, you can create more robust rules for future attempts of attacking your organization's network. Another one to touch on is stateful inspection. This can inspect the actual protocol of the packet and look for anomalies. So if you take, let's say, an HTTP packet and there's something embedded in there, this will be able to identify that and mark it as malicious traffic. For your end user devices, you could install antivirus, anti-malware software, provides real-time protection against malware. User gets the email, didn't listen to the training, clicks on the link, it attempts to install something. These programs will stop that in real time. Common ones you'll hear are Microsoft Defender, McAfee, and specific to email or any traffic you can apply this to would be rate limits. If you start seeing emails go out or come in at a very exponential rate, you can configure triggers to hold those emails, drop them, or perform some action to stop that from occurring until you can identify whether this is spam or a potential attack on the system. So before we get to the end of the slide, we'll just summarize some of the points. SpamBot, again, massive leak in 2017, 700 million plus. It really highlights the importance of authentication, protecting anything you put out there with some form of authentication request, and that's just open to the public. And it really opened up the real world implications of data being leaked. What is this being used for? Again, protections, proactive and reactive. I won't re-summarize them, but both sides of the house need to be looked at when you're protecting against spam bots. And then final thoughts, for anything you implement, you must take into consideration total cost of ownership. Is it software, hardware? Implementation with growth goes along with TCO. Can you scale this as your organization gets bigger? And when you're identifying vendors to prevent this, what are you looking for? Are you looking for something that's on-premise based? Do you want a cloud service? What features do you want? You want gray listing available, possibly URL blocking? All things organizations need to take into account. And with that, I thank you for your time. Good luck in the rest of the semester. At the end of the slide here, I have all the references used. And thank you again.